All right, we've got our full animation. We're on our stage. It's all saved. It plays through the way we want. So how do we save it as a GIF? I showed you at the end of the last video, you can go with newer versions of Photoshop only. You can say, save a copy, choose GIF as one of the drop-down options, and then it will save with the animation script, even though older Photoshop versions, it didn't. But the way to get the most options is to go to File and Export, and then say Save for Web Legacy. This is a legacy format to support the oldest digital image file that's on the internet, right? Which are these GIFs. Now you can see it at full pixel resolution, right? If you want it to all fit, you can shrink it down just in the preview. And you can see the 256 colors that it's changing. Now, these 256 colors are for your entire animation, not just for your first frame. So as my animation changes and his skin gets pinker as he blushes, those pinks have to already be in here. You can actually customize each of these colors if you want, right? You can choose which ones get swapped out. Sometimes for memory usage, you have to get really precise about it. The settings here, I usually leave all the defaults except these are the different options for how it can choose color. And if you don't like the way it's fragmenting your colors, you might choose something else. Adaptive is sometimes nice. And sometimes you won't see much of a difference at all, right? Selective. These are all different ways to output the colors for your animation. And then you can preview it and just see how those colors work at different frames. So as he blushes, right, it's not as strong a red as it is in my PSD file. But then the eyes are still nice and red. Because it's not going to save 200 reds between blush and bright red. It's going to save like 3, right? And use them. Okay, so if that looks good, then you hit save. Oh, the other thing I like to set is the quality. I just set it to bicubic smoother. For these kind of animatic, pretty rough animations, that processes it a little bit better. All right, then you hit save. I save it to the desktop. Keep the same name, so it's a stage GIF. And then you can check your desktop and see that it's there. And here it is, right? Going to mark that as orange, going to put it into my assignment 3 folder. Lots of navigating. There we go. And let's put that up to Canvas. Now when you put it in, because it's a GIF, it will automatically start animating as soon as it's on that browser. Ooh. But that is how we output it. And then you do want to shrink it down because 8 by 8 inches at 100 pixels per inch. Remember, screen resolution is only 72 pixels per inch. So this is more like 14 inches by 14 inches, which is bigger than our computer screens. So you don't want it to fill up all of Canvas, but you want to make it big enough to be visible. So like that. And now we've got our second requirement posted. Our third requirement is a printable version of our finished animation. It's what I call a refined storyboard. And this teaches us layout techniques within Photoshop or Photopea. This is a little complex, so just follow along with me, and then I can help you individually for sure. But it gets tiresome to repeat it too many times. So if you can follow along and stop me when you have a question, that will help. There is nothing creative about this stage. This is everything's done, but we have to lay it out. The creativity is in what 9 frames are you going to use to tell the story. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take our animation, which has layer styles in it, which has transitions in it, right? Has all this stuff that's not reflected in our layers. We need to turn it into a flip book. This is what a flip book is, because some people in the morning class hadn't seen one before, which makes me very sad, but this is a flip book. So we used to make these as kids. Sometimes you can buy them from artists. They're just frame by frame animation in the most basic way, right? You make a drawing on each page and then you flip through it to see it move and animate. Make sense? What we're doing is we're going to turn our GIF animation into a flip book, and then we're going to tear out 9 pages and tell the story that way. So, how do we turn it into a flip book? Metaphorically, anyway. It's not necessarily a flip book in all of these layers. It could be for some of you, right? Because we kind of designed it that way, where each layer was clean. But I added these kind of transitions, so there's no layer that matches up to this. So how do I change it into a flip book? Select your top layer. Then go to your timeline and your window options. Click on it, just like how we made frames from our layers. Now we're going to do the opposite. We are going to flatten frames into layers. Your timeline's this thing at the bottom. That's the timeline window. And then the window options are always in the upper right-hand corner of that window. So this little hamburger stack. Click that, and then say flatten frames into layers. When you do that, it doesn't do anything to change your animation, but it changes what you see in your layers. So now you see what are called frames, right? Each of these frames is 100% opaque, and now I have a frame that goes with this timeline frame. I have a page, a flipbook page, that matches exactly what was in my animation, with any kind of layer style effects or anything else. Okay, now that we have flattened our frames into layers, they are renamed into frames and they are numbered nicely. But if I go down to frame 1, I'll see that beneath frame 1 are my old layers. Just for memory's sake, we're going to erase all those old layers. So click on your topmost layer, scroll all the way down, go to layer 1, bring those to the trash. Right. Now what we have is we have a flip book where each frame of our animation, no matter what timing we set up, is one 100% opaque normal layer. And so it just plays through it. So this is our flip book. It's a stack of images, right, that all play completely cleanly. Now what we do is we're going to select all of the timeline frames and trash them so they don't mess up as we reformat this to be our refined storyboard. But don't worry, because we're going to save it as a different name. So we're going to say File, Save As, and this time we're going to keep it as a PSD. This is the third PSD we are saving for this assignment. And we are calling it Refined Storyboard. This is what we would print for our midterm critique if we wanted to print our animation. It goes to my assignment 3. It's my Refined Storyboard. Now I can turn off the timeline window. And I want to check in the title of it that this is now a different name, because I don't want to overwrite my stage, because my stage PSD is where I would go to make any changes to my animation. Okay? So I've got a bunch of frames, all numbered. I have a total of 36 of them that make my animation. They're all stacked right here. They are turned on and off based on what layer I turn the eyeball on. Now, I need to make sure my rulers are turned on, because this is a layout project. We need to put this flip book right in the middle of a table, and then we need to tear out 9 pages and place them exactly in the right places so that it looks good. So make sure your rulers are turned on. To do that, hit Command R until your rulers are visible. You can find all of this under View options. So rulers, turn them on. Look if your rulers are in inches. If they are in inches, you should have 8 inches for the top and 8 inches for the side. If they are not in inches, we need to change that. That's an important layout thing. So click on Photoshop, go to Settings, go to Units and Rulers, and change the units ruler to inches. The default for Photoshop is in pixels, and that does not help us in terms of layout for physical paper dimensions. So inches, and then say OK. So everyone should see inches. Now you're going to use your move tool, and we've done this a little bit before. You're going to click on the ruler and bring guides down. And you're going to put a guide around all 4 sides of your animation, of your flip book. It's like I've done all my drawings. I've done my 36 drawings, and I stacked them all, but now I want to use those guides to kind of really square them up so they're perfectly aligned. And it's actually a good idea at this step to use the crop tool and then crop. The reason that's important is if any of you did assets that somehow got in there that went beyond the 8 by 8 inches, like if you're doing a panning shot of a background and instead of copying it over each time like I showed you, you just kind of brought in a big thing and then just moved it. Before you can get a clean flipbook page, you need to crop it. You need to kind of cut it at all its edges. Okay, now we are going to grow the table. The only way to do centered layout in Photoshop or Photopea is to grow from the middle using canvas size. So you're going to go to image canvas size, and we're going to put in a familiar width and height. It was 8 by 8. We are going to make it 30 inches by 40 inches. The largest size paper that a professional printing press can do. Now, even though it's 30 by 40 inches, I'll hit Command 0 to fit it all on screen. Even though it's 30 by 40 inches, it is still only 100 pixels per inch, right? Because we made this for screen resolution. But 100 pixels per inch at 30 by 40 inches is the same as 10 by 13 1/3 inches at print resolution at 300 pixels per inch. Does that make sense? So what we did is just take something that was screen format at 8 by 8 inches, and we've turned it into a sheet that's basically good enough for an 8 by 10 or even an 11 by 14 print. So that's important. You don't need to change your image size. You just need to know that's why we're making it 30 by 40 inches, even though it's still 100 pixels per inch. This does not mean we're able to print it 30 by 40 inches. Okay. Now, we made our table. We put our flip book right in the middle of the table. We have guides holding it there. But the table is set with this really ugly gray gingham tablecloth. And it hurts our eyes, right? So we're going to put a nice clean white tablecloth on it. So to do that, we scroll down to the bottom frame. And you click on the little post-it within the layer window to make a new layer. And that's going to be our only layer, right? All the rest are called frames. And then you're going to say Edit, Fill with White. 100% normal. That's putting a clean white tablecloth. Why do we do Edit, Fill for that? You always do Edit, Fill when you're doing layout for whites. It's the only way to absolutely ensure that it is 100% white. Because if it's even 1% gray, or 1% yellow, or 1% orange, right? That will print. And you will be really upset because you'll have the white edge of the paper, and then it will be like just slightly off white with a hard line. So in formatting, you want your background to be 100% white. And you do that with Edit Fill. Then I just need to move it beneath my flipbook so that all my frames are on top of the white tablecloth. Now we need to make an even gutter on all sides of our flipbook so we can place our pages in exact order and in exact cleanness. This is all about attention to detail. It's more than 50% of graphic design is knowing how to do clean layout. Right? So this is how we do it. Instead of just drawing a guide and saying, okay, that looks good, or I'm using the inches and I'm going to try to do it about there, and try to do that one about there and match it. That's not good enough. We are going to use the grid. So if you go to View, Show, Grid, it's right above Guides. The shortcut for it is Command'. It is hard to look at because of the moire patterns. kind of hurts your head.